What is up, guys? It's Controllaboard. Thought I'd make a video today talking about the nerfs that are happening in Hearthstone. If you're not aware, Innervate, Fire Wax, Hex, Spreading Plague, and Murloc Warleader are being nerfed as of September 18th. As somebody who plays Wild a lot, I figured I would talk about what I think the impacts will be of these nerfs on the format. Let's start with Innervate. So Innervate's being changed from 0 mana, gain 2 mana crystals to 0 mana, gain 1 mana crystal only this turn. Effectively, what Innervate's becoming is just a counterfeit coin, which means that it's probably not going to be good enough in any deck anymore. There's no Edwin Van Cleef in Druid. Unfortunately, the closest thing we have to that is Innervate Flappy Bird, or Vicious Fledgling, when we're playing Aggro Druid. But I assume that this nerf won't be super detrimental to Aggro Druid. I think it'll still be a prevalent deck within the metagame. But basically what'll happen is they're most likely going to cut cards like Vicious Fledgling, run a little bit more early game, have a consistent curve, and try to win that way. Your curves will now look like, you play 1-drop on turn 1, 2 1-drops on turn 2, a 1-drop and say a Power of the Wild or a single target buff on turn 3. Then turn 4, try to refill your hand with Jeeves. We saw my old Aggro Druid list have success this year, even without having Innervate in the list. Obviously the meta's sped up a little bit with the power creep with the new expansions, but it shows that you can have success in an aggressive Druid deck without running Innervate in your list. And I'm sure we'll see players still hit rank 1 with Aggro Druid lists without Innervate. The impacts on slower Druid decks, so we're talking the Naga Sea Witch list and Jade list, is pretty big as well. It's not like super huge because you can just run more ramp, but it doesn't let you not draw as hard. You can't do stuff like Mire Keeper on turn 1, or on turn 2 on the coin, Innervate coin, Nourish, and just get a permanent Innervate for the rest of the game, which is really nice. So that'll be a small hit to those decks, but it won't be super detrimental, and I think that all the Druid decks will still be viable that are viable right now. Next up is Hex, so moving Hex from 3 mana to 4 mana, no change in the card text. I think this will be annoying for kind of greedier Shaman decks in Wild, like Control Shaman. So think about Sippy Wee's, just N'Zoth Shaman deck, looks to use Ancestral Spirit and Reincarnation to develop thick minions. Hex is a really good 3 mana removal spell. With the way that Overload works in that deck, a lot of the time you're going to be overloaded for 2 during your turn, and 3 mana cards are kind of really spicy and super nice to use. So this nerf is probably actually going to hurt that deck a fair amount. Fortunately, for most other Shaman decks in Wild, you're going to be running Devolve instead of Hex because it's just a little bit of a stronger card. So Hex going from 3 to 4 mana won't really affect a lot of the top tier meta decks. And fortunately for us right now, Control Shaman, so Sippy Wee's list actually isn't really a huge part of the metagame at the moment. So it's not going to have a super direct impact immediately, but over a long period of time, 4 mana Hex will become apparent in this format. Next up is Murloc Warleader. So basically what's happening here is Murloc Warleader is losing the health or a buff, which is really good. So Murlocs will die to stuff like Equality plus Wild Pyro now, instead of leaving all the other Murlocs with 1 health. I think this change is fine because basically what it does is it keeps so anything can happen Murloc Paladin. So the OTK variant, still alive, healthy, everything good about that. Obviously a slight nerf to it, right? When you play a Bluegill Warrior, it'll be a 4-2 now. When you play Old Murkeye, it'll be a 5-2 instead of a 5-5. So it's toned down a little bit, your trades aren't going to be as great. But what this does is kind of knocks down just faster lists who use Murlocs. So think about like a mid-range Murloc list in Wild. Actually a really strong deck, similarly to Standard. It just knocks that down a little bit, because the aura buff is really frustrating to play into, and I think the nerf will be very apparent, although it doesn't seem like it will be. Because Warleader is one of those decks that's, one of the cards, that's just going to tie the deck together and help you win. But getting rid of that and disallowing the free trades that happen with the +1 health buff is actually going to significantly impact the deck's win rate, I think. So basically this will be a nerf to any deck that runs the water package, so you can think like Aggro Druid lists, some rogue decks, but mostly I'm thinking like mid-range Paladin, right, who just runs the Murloc package right now. Next up is Spreading Plague, so just being changed from 5 to 6 mana. This is a card that I really wish got nerfed a little bit harder. I kind of wish they Warsong this card, so if you guys don't know what Warsong Commander is, it was a 3 mana 2/3 that gave all your minions with 2 or less attack charge. They basically gutted it and just made it so all of your other charge minions have +1 attack. They didn't do that though, so Spreading Plague is still a viable card. It's 6 mana, I think it will still see play. You might ask why I don't like it. It's kind of just really annoying to play into, because a lot of the time when you're playing aggressive lists, you don't get to play around it. It gets a slight nerf, but obviously decks like Aggro Druid and Pyro Warrior are getting pretty big nerfs with the Innervate nerf and the Fire Wax. I don't think 1 mana on Spreading Plague is a huge deal, and I think if you want an anti-aggro tech card, this is still really good in a metagame where people are flooding a lot. And lastly, the nerf that's closest to me is the 3 mana Wax. So this going from 2 to 3 mana is huge in this format. So it's not going to be good enough to be running your list, unfortunately. Actually, King's Defender is strictly better than it because it gives your minions taunt. Kind of funny. So Warx should never be in your deck anymore, unfortunately. How the mighty have fallen. But really, this card's just probably not going to be good enough in Pyro Warrior anymore. Or any Warrior variants in general, especially in Wild, because for 4 mana we have Deathbite, right? A much better card. For 3 mana, if you think about Pyro Warrior, you have Bloodsail Cultist, you have Frothing Berserker, and you have Sea Captain. 3 very strong 3 mana cards. So you already got 6 in the deck. You don't really want to run 1 or 2 more. I think what this nerf's going to do is make Pirate Warrior even more polarized towards their win rate increasing on the coin and being bad on the play. Just because you're still going to have Ship's Cannon coin 1-drop is a really strong play when you're on the coin. Whereas when you're on the play, you're going to be really forced into drawing stuff like N'Zoth's First Mate or Upgrade on turn 1 into Bloodsail Raider basically exactly on turn 2. There's not really going to be a solid replacement for this. And I think one thing that's not really paid attention to here is that 3 really solid aggro cards are getting nerfed. So Innervate, Fire Warx, and Murloc War Leader, which I think is going to pave the way for a little bit of a slower metagame moving forward, which isn't necessarily good. Having a really powerful aggro decks like Pirate Warrior, Aggro Shaman, and I mean not really an aggro deck, but more of a curve deck, Midrange Paladin, is really important for a healthy metagame, I think. In order to keep a lot of the slower decks in check, it's really nice to have super strong aggro decks that can really punish players for adding bad or greedy cards to their deck lists. Unfortunately, the 2 most dominant aggro decks are being nerfed, so it's not going to happen as much moving forward. So my thoughts are that the metagame is going to slow down a fair bit. But I think the Warx nerf is going to actually change the way you play around and play against Pirate Warrior significantly. Thinking myself as a Combo Priest player, I now feel comfortable playing a Northshire Clerk or Zombie Chow on turn 1. Whereas usually I'd wait a little bit longer or wait until I had like a Power Word Shield to play with them to play on turn 2 Warx. But now that changes, which is kind of engaging, and I'm sort of happy with the nerfs because they will make the game fresh and change things up. Overall, I think all the nerfs are fine. Again, I wish Fire Warx was left as a 2-mana 3/2. I understand for design space, it makes sense, but it kind of sucks that aggro has this huge gap left, specifically Power Warrior with the 2-mana slot. Just a huge gap. The rest of the nerfs I think are fine, and I wish Spreading Plague would have been gutted, but I think they're fine. They will impact Wild quite a bit, again, with the whole aggro thing. Control decks will likely be able to rise up, be a little bit more greedy now. Overall, engaging nerfs, I'm happy that they're doing them just because constant changes to the game are really good. And as somebody who plays a lot of Hearthstone, I'm happy with any changes in the metagame. Thanks for checking me out, guys. I'm live every day on Twitch at 1 AM and 1 PM PST for about 4 hours each. Trying the new stream 2 a day thing. Feel free to come check me out. First 2 hours of my streams will be standard. Second 2 hours will be wild. Testing out a new schedule. Also feel free to sub to me on YouTube and hit me up with that follow on Twitter. Appreciate it, guys. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. See you in a bit.